The post-corona era. Hello. Hello, Dr. Michael Leitman. Hello, everyone. We are continuing our educational course called The Post-Coronavirus Era. And today our lesson is Man in the Interconnected World. And I would like to begin the exposition with a quote of Albert Einstein. And tell me, how do you feel about this? It seems very appropriate. He says that man is a part of the whole that we call the universe, a limited part in terms of motion, time, space, feeling himself as something separate from the entire world, which is an optical illusion. And this illusion, it confines us in the world of our own desires and only those that are close to us. Our goal is to free ourselves of this prison until we feel the whole and complete world in its entire glory. No one will be able to realize this kind of goal to the fullest, but the attempt to do it is part of the foundation for the inner certainty of achieving this. Do you agree, or would you like to add something? You see, when you start digging into these sayings, you come to the conclusion that you're actually talking about different matters, reasons, and solutions. Turns out that everything's correct and true, and everything is how it's supposed to be. How else? But eventually you come to that everyone goes their own way. I agree. I also ask all the time. We talk about loving others, connection, and we see that things are only becoming worse. Where are we, and where's this connection and love of others? And it was said about this thousands of years ago, and it's pretty, it's nice, and everyone understands and everything. All religions are based on that. Everything's pretty and nice, and even today I have researches about a man. He's as if pragmatic. He says that, yes, connection can bring us good, but where are we and where's the connection? And why then? Because our ego does not allow us to make concessions toward each other. So if at a certain point I make a concession, then the next moment I no longer want to make concessions. I run from it. I try to get something from it for myself. Look at the agreements that governments make in governments and so on. See how many laws there are in every government. For every action of every person, there has to be a law. And who can make sure that it is realized, and what do we have to do in relation to this? There are people that their work is to invent new laws, write them down, and put them on the shelf. And then, when necessary, they take them out and use them in order to prove one thing or another. This law exists, we have to use it, and this way they want to step on the other. Meaning, to us, all of these movements of our ego are clear, where we want to subjugate everyone else to ourselves and to see and look at how proudful all the parliament members are when they appear on TV trying to step on the other by different methods, parliamentary methods, so-called. But how long can you stand these things? How long can they exist? But there is something besides that. This is how nature created us. On our next meeting, we'll talk about the characteristics of our ego. Maybe things will become clearer, but today we'd like to look at the tendency of the ego, the tendency of nature that wants to unite us, integrate us. Even integration itself, it's one of the most important forms of socializing, of society. It's the connection between two objects, subjects, that by form of open intellect, of open conversation, would like to reach some kind of mutual goal and so on. We see how nature is pushing us toward integration, and there is a dramatic situation, meaning on the one hand, we have to be interconnected. On the other hand, a tremendous ego, and it's really hard. Several examples. First of all, it's the integrity of people in order to survive. They had to integrate. Then there were the integration of cultures, religions, many kinds of. We see this kind of tendency, inclination, direction in nature. Then a different kind of integration was colonization that started with revealing America, economical integration. The Europeans, or previous European colonies, they controlled 84% of the land. Now, my question is, all of this went and developed, and nature pushed us toward this, and no one wanted to do it on purpose. And here, suddenly, there appears some kind of virus that simply separates us. 2 meters apart, we cut off all the connections. What is it leading to? It's like it's as if against nature. Well, we're actually headed one way or another towards separation, distancing, moving away. In the past, we used to live together in a village, in extended families and something. Today, no. Today, everyone has their own apartment. Today, you have no such thing that the newlywed live with their parents. In the past, it was, natural. Now, every little child has to have a room of his own, meaning his own space. His ego is becoming so big that even though that he's only 5 or 10, still he demands a space of his own. This mine, don't go in, and so on. So we see that man's ego is growing, and here we also have the next level of the ego that appears, that nature itself is showing us, that if you are with one another, then the connection between you leads you to disease and death. So you have to stay 2 meters apart, or even 10 meters apart. Who knows what will this bring us to? Actually, it's very natural. This way we can harm each other less. So we can come to the conclusion that what is revealed to us now, that nature has as if forbidden us from being connected with one another. It stopped us from our egoistic connection. Here we learn something else. On the one hand, against our own will, we stopped working and we find ourselves in our families. And already for 2-3 weeks, all of us are sitting with our families. And there are certain problems that appear because a person's not used to this style of life. On the one hand. On the other hand, not only couples, but also parents and their children and so on, meaning there are social problems that appear. This all has very strong implications. So nature is putting kind of an experiment on us. That's how I see it. I look at nature as a higher reason that's leading us to a certain state, and that knows how we're supposed to function and sees how we actually function. how we understand, acknowledge our situation, how can we come out of this situation, comparing the pleasant with the unpleasant, with different kinds of development, how by this, throughout this, our habits change, social, some kind of problems and their solution. It's a tremendous perestroika that is going on in all countries together on different levels and different cultures, but this is how it is. We live in an interconnected world. This is the topic of our lesson. And this interconnection, it appears on all levels. There are things like the butterfly effect, domino effect, collective, the wisdom of the crowds, and so on. We see how this interconnection appears in society. For example, there is even this discipline like crowdsourcing, using the public in order to solve different problems. And so, it says that interconnection is a state of mutual responsibility and interdependence of whoever or whatever, a connection where no side can get along without the other. You're studying Kabbalah you're engaged in Kabbalah for more than 40 years, and it's written about this law of mutual responsibility in the Torah. It was written about it thousands of years ago. My question to you is, can you explain what is the law of mutual responsibility? It is when all of us comprise one integral system, and we're not talking about all people in the world. We didn't come to that yet, but actually, nature is pushing us toward acknowledging ourselves as completely integral, interconnected, and therefore we have to change our attitude toward each other, helping our mutual help toward each other, everything in order for us to see ourselves as one organism. Organism meaning the way I care for my organism and I wish to the best, instinctively, I wish the best for it. The very same way, I have to participate in the same way in nature and to aspire to make it so that everyone will achieve the same level. From what I read, your teacher, Bala Sulam, Yehuda Ashlag, who wrote a lot about this, has an article called Mutual Responsibility. Is it like a physical law that exists? Does it exist on the physical level, on the animate level? Meaning that it's, as he says here, that it is the law of reception and bestowal and the balance between the two. And the law of reception is that every member of the nation, of the society, tries to receive everything that he needs in order to be able to exist. And the law of bestowal is that every person has to care for the well-being of society. And he says that if a person does not keep the law of bestowal, of giving, because the first law of reception, obviously, we keep it, then all the problems, disasters, everything comes upon a person, and nature sends all of these things because we do not keep this law. So can you explain, how can a person keep this law? How to keep it, this is a completely different question. How to keep it, it's a completely different problem. And that he has to keep it, this we see from the picture of nature that is revealed to us. Okay, I agree that it's a different question until we say how. We'll keep investigating this, but how can we prove it? From what we see in front of us a completely integral system. We see in front of us one unique and unified nature, and man is a part of nature, whether he likes it or not, with all of his ego and all of his deviations and whatnot. And so what follows is that we can't somehow run from the integral picture of nature. We're a part of it. We can't come in or go out. We're inside the system. We can't exist outside of this system. We exist in it. And this system is dynamic. It develops all the time. On the still level for hundreds of thousands of years, on the vegetative level for tens of thousands of years, on the animate level for thousands of years, and on the human level, dozens of years, or just years. Meaning, the higher or nature is organized, the quicker the different stages of development occur in it. So the question is, when we start revealing ourselves in the system, we see that we're opposed to the system. And we're opposed because of a very simple reason. The reason is that we are not instinctively operated by nature, but that nature influences us through the element of freedom. You can agree to how nature is working on you or not, to the measure of your agreement or disagreement. To that extent, you actually determine your fate. And what happens is that we are very miserable people. Nature was given to us. We can exist in it, we can live in it, create whatever we want. And on the next important level, and what to do about all of this, we don't know. Meaning we do everything to the harm of others, harming ourselves. We don't understand that integral nature forces us to work in a way that to our own benefit is to the benefit of others. There's really a problem here that if we're talking about the laws of physics, we can reveal them, we research them, but to reveal the law of bestowal in society, not only bestowal, but how much to give society and how much to receive, this is hidden from us. In us, we don't have such a scale that could tell me, do it like this or do it like that. We don't have this instinct, on the one hand. On the other hand, like Yuda Ashlag writes, that not keeping these laws as a result of breaching the laws of nature, humanity is destroyed from the inside, like depression, the falling apart of families, economical crises, and so on. So if we take what Yuda Ashlag says, we see that we at least understand where all the problems come from, that we cannot correctly balance our ego in terms of how much to give and how much to receive to and from humanity, society, because our egoistic nature is hidden from us. If I don't give society, I don't see that things are getting worse. To the contrary, people that take from society, they're happier. So there's a kind of paradox. But furthermore, I'd like to ask that actually the blows of nature, this is what Yuda Ashlag writes, that they happen to the measure of development of society. Meaning to the measure of development of society, nature corrects us. Could you relate to this correction? How does it differ from the correction, from those viruses, cataclysms that happened 100 years ago? In accordance with our development, we get more and more blows from nature. Nature is punishing us. It seems to us that it's punishing us. Punishment is not a correct word. It teaches us. It shows us the level, on what level and to what measure are we wrong. We are deviating from integration between us and connecting with the general picture of nature. So what follows is that we, in general, aren't learning anything. We're kind of stupid or something. We don't understand what we have to do. Well, we do, but no one wants to hear. And what happens is that nature is pushing and pushing us with our face into our mistakes, and we don't see them. We don't see them. And the most successful among us are those that see these mistakes the least. Those that simply spit at all of these incompatibilities of man with the world, the surrounding world. They do things as they wish. And they're considered to be the most successful. So I understand that nature is pushing us toward cooperation, solidarity. We see that when such cataclysms come, we see that this is how it is, that people are beginning to relate to each other more softly. It's not because they're starting to understand something about necessity, but once the threat is gone, they immediately go back to their own ways. Yeah, we see it throughout history, wars and everything. So how does nature want to lead us to this kind of solidarity, to this kind of connection if blows don't help? On the one hand, yes, there are blows. On the other hand, it doesn't help. Nature is leading us to a state where we will acknowledge, understand this, that we'll see how integral it is, and we will feel, according to our analogy, how much we have to, or how we have to be integral. So it's possible to make a conclusion that nature is demanding of us as human beings, as the creator of civilization, to understand all of this, and for us ourselves to somehow want to emotionally be in connection with one another, unite, and so on. The connection on the next level. In our connection, we have, for us to create such a system of connections that we will feel the entire force of nature, its motivating force, and that we will become like it, eternal, whole, complete, all-attaining. So there has to be some kind of shift in values in society. Of course, in each and every one, and in all of us together. So if today, reception, how do you see, what will man be filled with in this future society? Man in society in the future will be filled only thanks to the attainment of the upper perfect, amazing connection between all the parts, forces of nature, this integral picture of nature. That's called the illumination or radiation of the Shekhinah, godliness, and the attainment of the whole perfect and harmonious connection will be what will delight man in the future. So man will receive pleasure from the process itself of building interconnections, interrelations, connection with other people. Yes, in the connection with other people, man will discover the unique and unified force of nature, and this will fulfill and elevate him. It's something emotional, right? It's not that we have to run around giving something to someone. Obviously, it's an emotional connection. We can call that love, or you can call it love. It's simply the way we imagine it. Love is something completely opposite to that. It's self-egoistic fulfillment. Okay, thank you very much. We'll continue learning, studying the laws of nature, the laws of interconnection between people. The conclusions that we can make is that we can have to independently come to a state where we are engaged in building the correct connections between us consciously, not through blows. Yes, thank you very much. Until next time.